What if you only planned to work a shift to cover your rent, but woke up as the wife of one of the most powerful billionaires in America? What would you do? Would you run from the glittering lights of luxury? Or would you stay, walking forward with a man whose name you barely learned less than 24 hours ago? This isn't a fairy tale. It's the emotional journey of Olivia, a struggling ballet dancer in New York, and John, a reclusive billionaire who hides his heart behind walls colder than stone. From a kiss on a balcony to a spontaneous marriage under midnight stars. From whispered promises to shocking truths and sweet traps set by a former flame. This story will take you through every emotion love can bring. Confusion, suspicion, heartbreak, and the courage to choose. If you love heartfelt, authentic stories about love, forgiveness, and trust, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next journey that touches the heart. Part 1. The waitress and the unexpected encounter in New York evening at the Grand Plaza Hotel in New York was cloaked in gold, bathed in the glow of hundreds of glittering crystal chandeliers. Classical music floated from the string ensemble in the back of the room, blending seamlessly with the soft laughter and conversations of the elite. But tucked away in a quiet corner, among trays of champagne silently gliding through the hands of servers, walked a young woman with graceful poise. That woman was Olivia. Born into a family of immigrant laborers, Olivia had once dreamed of becoming a professional ballerina. But life doesn't always smile back. Her father passed away early, her mother fell seriously ill, and the little girl had to grow up fast in a city that never sleeps. By day, she trained endlessly in a shared studio with 3 other dancers. By night, she slipped into her black and white uniform and served drinks at lavish parties where she was just another invisible face. That night, she thought it would be like every other night. Serve, pick up broken glass, and go home exhausted. But when the grand ballroom doors swung open, a gust of cold wind swept in, along with a man whose presence made the entire room pause. John stepped in, tall, composed, dressed in a hand-tailored tuxedo, with the piercing gaze of a man familiar with power. But there was something about him that Olivia couldn't look away from. It wasn't his wealth. It was the quiet loneliness expertly hidden beneath the gleam of perfection. They met when she offered him a glass of champagne. Their eyes locked for the briefest moment, but it was enough for the rest of the world to fade into the background. "You don't look like the other staff here," he said in a low, steady voice. It was half observation, half question. Olivia smiled, proud but not arrogant. "I'm a dancer. This is just a side role." John gave a subtle nod, as if he'd just uncovered something rare in a world full of masks. No one knew that this brief exchange would open the door to a chain of events that would alter their lives forever. A fateful night, a bold proposition, and a marriage that began with nothing more than surprise. Part 2. An unexpected moment and the night that changed everything. The party continued like a familiar symphony, where everyone knew exactly the role they were meant to play. But for Olivia, something had shifted after that fleeting moment of eye contact with the man across the room. She thought it would end at that, just a spark of curiosity, a rare glance exchanged between 2 worlds separated by a million miles of belief and background. But sometimes, life surprises those who've grown used to hardship, with chances no one could have predicted. As Olivia returned to the staff room to change out of her uniform, a well-dressed hotel attendant she didn't recognize approached her with a formal demeanor. "Ms. Olivia Cove, is that correct? Mr. John would like to invite you for a cocktail in the private lounge, if you don't mind." She froze for a moment. Part of her wanted to decline, out of surprise, out of the clear gap between wealth and simplicity, out of fear of stepping into a world she'd never considered her own. But then she remembered the nights she carried trays through snowstorms, her worn-out ballet slippers, and most of all, his eyes, John's eyes, which had held something achingly real. She nodded. The private lounge was on the top floor of the hotel, with windows that looked straight out onto the glowing Fifth Avenue skyline. John stood by the glass wall, a glass of wine in hand, his gaze distant. "Thank you for coming up," he said gently, without an ounce of arrogance. "You asked me here just to say thank you?" Olivia replied, half sincere, half cautious. John turned to her, and in that moment his eyes weren't those of a billionaire. but of a man confronting himself. I'm used to people who come to me for fame, for power, for advantage. But you looked at me like I was just a man, and that's rare. Silence fell between them. Then John slowly set his glass down. If I told you I want to leave this party right now and take you somewhere quieter, would you come? Olivia stood still. Never in her life had she been faced with a question so bold and so honest. She didn't answer with words, but her eyes, steady, deep, unflinching, spoke louder than any nod. And so, that night, they slipped away from the glittering lights, beginning a journey neither of them could have anticipated. A ride straight to New York's East River, where their story wouldn't start with champagne or diamonds, but with something rarer: authenticity. Part 3. An unexpected decision on a New York night. The limousine glided silently through the streets of New York. Inside, Olivia sat quietly next to John. The soft scent of sandalwood filled the air, and the gentle notes of classic jazz floated through the cabin like a backdrop to thoughts still unspoken. Olivia still couldn't fully grasp how she ended up here, beside one of the most powerful men in America, after nothing more than a glance shared in the night. But what kept her from walking away wasn't the luxury. It was his eyes, gentle, searching, as if trying to find something he had once lost. John had invited her to a quiet cafe tucked into an old neighborhood near the East River. No noise, no cameras, no security detail, just warm yellow lights, worn wooden tables, and a record player softly spinning in the corner. "Have you ever done something completely reckless?" John asked, his eyes fixed on the window, where city lights reflected across the shimmering river. Olivia smiled softly. "I dropped out of college to become a dancer. Does that count as reckless?" John stared at her for a moment, then laughed, a real laugh, surprised by the sound of his own joy. "Then we're not so different," he said. "I once walked out of a multi-million-dollar contract signing just to walk alone along this river." A warm silence settled between them. Then John tilted his head slightly, his gaze turning serious. "Do you believe in moments when the universe nudges two people into the same place, even if they have absolutely nothing in common?" Olivia didn't answer with words, but her eyes, deep, open, and unguarded, spoke volumes. And then, as if to prove the universe's point, John stood up and pulled a folded paper from his wallet, a temporary marriage license issued by the state of New York. He placed it on the table between them. "All it takes is a signature, and we'll legally be husband and wife for 24 hours. Just one day, to live as two people free of past or future. No pressure, no promises, just to understand what we are to each other." Olivia's breath caught. It was a wild proposal, but in John's eyes, there was no manipulation, only an aching kind of sincerity. She looked down at her own hands, calloused from years of training, rough from the grind of poverty. Then taking a slow, deep breath, she picked up the pen. One signature, one night, and maybe the beginning of something that could last a lifetime. Part 4, A Night Eternal in the Heart of New York. The temporary marriage license was signed in silence. No one said a word. No words were needed. Streetlights spilled through the glass, casting a soft glow on Olivia's hand, trembling slightly as she passed the paper to John. He didn't look at her right away, only carefully folded the document as if he were preserving something sacred. "So, from this moment on," he murmured, "I'm your husband. For one day." Olivia smiled, her eyes reflecting both warmth and a flicker of uncertainty. "One day," she replied, "but maybe a lifetime, if the heart is strong enough." John didn't answer. Instead, he extended his hand. A quiet, gentle gesture. She took it, allowing herself to be led like a dancer trusting her partner on the grandest stage of all, life. They stepped out of the cafe and into the night of New York, windy, glittering, full of shadows and possibilities. A limousine waited nearby, but John waved it off. They walked. Beneath dim yellow streetlights, along cracked sidewalks no one paid attention to, two souls from different worlds melted into one unnamed moment. Then, like something out of an old film, John brought her somewhere unexpected. A tiny chapel tucked into a forgotten corner of Brooklyn. Its caretaker was Miss Celia, an aging former ballerina who had long since left the stage but still believed in miracles. Miss Celia looked at Olivia as though she'd known her in a past life, then smiled softly. "You've come just in time, dear. This chapel's been waiting for you tonight. No guests, no spotlights, no bridal gowns or tuxedos, just a weathered organ, rows of empty wooden pews, and two people trembling under the weight of their own courage." John looked at Olivia, and for the first time, his eyes weren't those of a billionaire, but of a man laying down his armor and offering his heart. "Miss Olivia," he said, voice breaking with emotion, "if life is a dance, then I'd rather be your clumsy partner, just to follow the rhythm of your steps forever." Olivia laughed softly, tears shimmering at the corners of her eyes. "Then let's dance," she whispered. "Dance like tonight is forever." And beneath the warm candlelight of a forgotten chapel in the city that never sleeps, two strangers chose each other, not for fame or perfection, but because they truly saw one another. Part 5. The Dawn of a New Melody. After that strange yet deeply moving wedding night, Olivia woke up in her own small apartment. A place so familiar, yet somehow different. Not because of the furniture, nor the early sunlight streaming through the window, but because of her heart. Lighter, softer, and filled with both doubt and hope. The wedding ring still rested quietly on her left hand, simple, unadorned. The only thing left from a decision no one could have predicted. John had left early, but he'd left behind a handwritten note next to a steaming cup of tea. "Olivia, I have an important meeting at 9 a.m., but I left you this tea, knowing you'd wake before the sun. If you're willing, I'd love to take you to dinner tonight, not as your husband, but as a man hoping to understand the extraordinary woman he just married." She laughed, gently, genuinely, and no longer felt like she was dreaming. That evening, they met again, this time at a small corner spot in Soho. Not a five-star restaurant like John's usual style, but a cozy Italian place run by an elderly Sicilian couple. The owner recognized John, but was surprised to see him with a woman so simple. No makeup, no glitter, no pretense. "First time I've seen him look at someone like that," the old lady whispered to Olivia while pouring the wine. Dinner was quiet, unfussy, honest. John spoke of his mother, a single mom who raised him while cleaning houses. Of a childhood filled with cold winters, bread and tap water for dinner, and the dream of one day owning a place with central heating. Olivia spoke of leaving college to chase ballet, of calloused feet, of loneliness hidden behind stage curtains. Two people, one a billionaire, the other a dancer, began to realize they were more alike than different. "Do you regret marrying me?" John asked, his voice gentle. Olivia looked at him for a long moment, then slowly shook her head. "No, I'm just afraid I might actually fall in love with you." John didn't answer. He just smiled and took her hand under the table. Outside, New York buzzed as always. But in that moment, between the hum of passing cars, the soft piano echoing from the restaurant, and the warmth of a hand held gently, something real had begun. Not a fairy tale, but a melody. Just beginning to play. Part 6. When Two Worlds Collide. 1 month after their unexpected wedding, Olivia moved in with John to his penthouse in the heart of Manhattan. A place with 6-meter-high ceilings, gleaming hardwood floors, and massive glass windows overlooking Central Park. And yet, within all that vast space, she began to feel small. Couture dresses arrived daily from luxury fashion houses. Invitations to prestigious galas flooded in, and conversations often revolved around investments, strategy, and markets. Olivia tried to keep up, smiling politely, walking the way she was taught, learning how to shake hands like the upper class. But every time she stepped through those large glass doors into that world, it felt like she was wearing a dress that didn't quite fit. John remained gentle, patient. Every evening, he tried to be home on time, shared dinner with her, and asked about the kids' ballet class she had just started teaching. But somehow, a thin mist began to settle between them. Not cold, not defined, but enough to cloud the warmth they once had. One evening, after a high-profile charity gala, where Olivia was quietly mocked by a socialite for mispronouncing a French designer's name, she returned home, silently removed her diamond earrings, and placed them on the table. "I feel like I'm living in a world that wasn't built for me," she whispered. John stood behind her, hesitating. "I just wanted you to have the best of everything." Olivia turned, her eyes glassy. "That's the thing. I never asked for better. I just wanted real." That night, they lay beside each other without touching. Silence stretched between them, lingering until the morning, when John left early for a meeting and left only a note behind. "We'll talk tonight. I'm sorry." Olivia stayed in the penthouse, but her thoughts drifted back to her old apartment in Brooklyn. Just her, a ballet mat, and a dream. Maybe it was that simplicity that her heart had truly belonged to all along. She knew, if they couldn't find common ground between two worlds, between stage lights and city lights, then their love would remain a beautiful dance, one that never quite made it to the final step. Part 7. Hold on or let go. That morning, Olivia woke up in a silent penthouse. John had left early, leaving behind a hastily written note. "I'll be home early tonight. I miss you." She looked around the luxurious apartment. There was nothing lacking, and yet something was missing. Something she couldn't name. Stepping out onto the balcony, the October breeze kissed her cheeks with a gentle chill. From above, New York sparkled like a magnificent painting, but inside Olivia, the colors had begun to fade. That evening, when John returned, Olivia was already waiting. Not in a cocktail dress, not wearing makeup, just Olivia with her hair down and the same deep, steady eyes. "We need to talk," she began, her voice soft but unwavering. John nodded, silent. "I don't know if I can keep living like this," she said, clutching the edge of her shawl. "I love you, but I can't lose myself just to hold on to a love that's no longer itself." John stepped closer, hesitating, as if it were the first time he'd ever approached her. "I've built an entire empire," he whispered. "But the one thing I never figured out how to hold on to was you." She looked straight into his eyes, for the first time, without flinching. "Then let me go back. Not to leave you, but to find myself again. And if we're truly meant to be, this love will lead me back to you." John didn't speak. He stepped forward, wrapped his arms around her tightly for a long moment, and then, quietly, let go. The following week, Olivia moved out of the penthouse. She returned to her small Brooklyn apartment, reopened her dance classes, and lived simply, just like before. But this time, her heart was full of memories, kisses under New York lights, whispered promises over glasses of wine, and a man named John, who had once loved her with everything he had. Then one late afternoon, as she was guiding her students through their first pirouettes, the studio door creaked open. John walked in, not in a polished designer suit, but in a plain button-down shirt and shoes worn from the street. "I've thought it through," he said, voice trembling. "I don't want a home that doesn't have you in it. I want to build one with you, even if it's small, as long as it's filled with your laughter." Olivia didn't say a word. She just reached out, took his hand, and placed it over her heart, the place that had never stopped remembering him. And just like that, love was never about giving up. It was about choosing each other all over again, after having the courage to let go and the strength to return. A scandal, a shocking photograph, a goodbye that felt final. But on that rainy night, when Olivia ran back to her old apartment, John came, not with flowers, not with money, but with the truth and a blueprint. A private ballet studio, built just for her. A silent, powerful promise he had been preparing all along. Then, under the eyes of hundreds at the year's biggest gala, John stepped on stage, held the mic, looked straight at the woman he loves, and said, "I once built an empire to prove my worth. But now, she is my greatest accomplishment." Their story began with a mistake, but ended with the most beautiful choice. Staying, not for fame or fortune, but for love. And what about you? If life handed you an accidental mess, would you be brave enough to turn it into the most beautiful thing you've ever known? If this story touched your heart, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to stay connected with more powerful, unforgettable stories. We tell stories so you can feel them.